Face of Another is a first-person psychological horror game where you play as Emma, a student obsessed with her phone who enters a strange digital world. Full disclosure, this game was sent to me by the developers, and it's available on Steam. Atmosphere. It starts with just the shower coming on its own. There's this feeling that something is wrong that builds into the paranoia that someone else is in your home with you. But even that feels tame once the barrier breaks down and you enter the warped digital world that's the rest of the game. And once it reveals its hand, the real atmosphere begins. The game uses low rumbling to invoke a feeling of dread, deep, spacious-sounding environments that almost feel unreal, but the thing that inflicted the most dread was the upsettingly low view distance that's almost stifling as you creep through the decrepit house, piercing the darkness with your phone's weak flashlight. Anything can be lurking in the darkness ahead, and the game isn't afraid to give you reasons to fear what's coming, with some pretty intense jump scares to remind you that you aren't safe and help draw out the anticipation for the next one. There's lots of great setups for scary moments, and anyone who's played a few scary games will feel most of the events coming, that feeling of having no choice but to walk into a trap. Needless to say, the game is intense, but it doesn't rush itself to get there, with some absolutely fantastic build-ups that escalate from small things happening, almost like the paranormal, and eventually it descends into full-on dread as the game reaches its midpoint. That's one Harry Mason.
So cute.
Scares. The game uses sound effects really well and has several moments where a sound will play, like a creaking floorboard coming from behind you, and cause you to stop and question if there's something really there. It also does this with footsteps too. The sound of bare feet rushing up behind you is deeply upsetting and causes you to pause and wait for a jump scare that sometimes never comes. The jump scares themselves are again used sparingly and incredibly well. Some do come out of nowhere, but never in a way that feels cheap, and some of them happen when you're so deep into what feels like a trap that it would be criminal to not have something happen. They're executed perfectly, easily some of the best I've had in ages. There are some smaller scripted events which manage to be eerie and set off alarms in your head. Most of them are just unsettling and make you want to leave the area, though the game does reuse a specific type of event a lot, which doesn't really get tiring since the game's only an hour long, but it does happen enough to be notable. The game reaches its peak near the end with an inventive boss fight, but really the game completely nails the scares and easily mastered pretty much everything it tried to do. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. There's a deep reverb that encompasses the game, footsteps reverberate like you're floating in space, and the sound effects themselves are put to good use as mentioned earlier. But the more interesting stuff is done with the glitching effects and how they rip through your headphones like a digital lightning bolt. This is combined with music that sounds more akin to take place on an unholy altar, with its ultra-low vibrations and horns that resonate like the bowels of an ancient hell. But the game also mixes in more synth-related pulses too that are equally as unsettling. There's some voice acting and it's distorted and weird, which makes it a little hard to judge, but it's certainly creepy. The only criticism is that some of the sound effects don't take place in the environment. Every now and then a sharp inhale can be heard as you do something to give you the feeling that someone's next to you, but turning around it doesn't move with you, which hurts the moment a little. But other than this, it's fantastic. That's 3 Harry Masons. Gore. There's some blood and eyeballs in the game, and dealing with them is a little unsettling, but that's all it really needed. It doesn't go overboard with it. That's 4 Harry Masons. Story. The story begins with Emma sitting on her bed, and she laments on how her friend Sarah hasn't messaged her in a while, and how she seems to have difficulty remembering what Sarah's face looks like if she's not looking at the pictures of her on her phone. After some paranormal events, she's pulled into the digital world. The story is told really well and manages to do a great job altering your perception of your character, from the game's opening, which makes you feel like the victim, to realizing that you've done something wrong around the midpoint. It covers some topics in terms of what life is like with the ever-present monolith of social media and what the effects can have on the minds of kids who are raised in the digital age. It doesn't quite play into the game's title very much or explain some things, but the story still ended up feeling pretty good despite the fact that the game is still only an hour long, making the final score 5 out of 5 Harry Masons. This was absolutely fantastic and I highly recommend this. It's been a while since something has frightened me and managed to inflict dread so well. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion of horror games. If you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I found Sarah's face, I didn't stop running away, and I advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Let's go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.